Your home is full, and somehow it still feels empty, not of objects, of peace. I felt that for almost 2 years without knowing why, until I noticed my kitchen drawer never fully closed. A spatula was wedged in wrong, and at some point I just stopped seeing it. That's what this kind of clutter does. It doesn't stay clutter for long. It quietly becomes furniture. Japanese homes feel calm, not because people own less. It's 25 specific habits, almost invisible on their own, that quietly fill a space faster than any decluttering session can clear it. Today, all 25, the habit, why it works against you, and the one shift that fixes it for good. Stay to the end. The last habit is one most people never even recognize as a habit at all. 25. Buying storage before decluttering. There is a particular kind of optimism that drives people to the home goods aisle before they've touched a single drawer. You feel overwhelmed. The counter is crowded, the closet resists closing, the living room surface has accumulated 3 weeks of mail and miscellaneous objects that arrived without invitation. So you buy bins, stackable ones, a set of drawer dividers, a basket in a neutral color that will look good on the shelf. The purchase feels like action. It feels like the beginning of order. But storage bought before decluttering doesn't create order. It creates a more organized-looking version of the same problem. The bins fill, the basket fills. The same objects that overwhelmed the open counter now overflow into 3 containers, each labeled, each full, each representing a decision that was never actually made. This is one of the most common and most expensive mistakes in the decluttering process. Expensive not in money, but in momentum. Once you've organized a problem, the urgency to solve it disappears. The bins create the appearance of resolution. The actual resolution never happens. The sequence needs to be reversed. First, remove everything from the space, all of it, so you're looking at the honest baseline, the space as it actually exists. Second, evaluate each item individually. Does it belong here? Does it belong anywhere in this home? Is it earning the space it asks for? Only after that, and only for specific identified needs, is storage purchased. What most households discover in this sequence is that they didn't need better storage. They needed fewer things to store. The shift is precise. Clear first, organize second, purchase last, and only for something you can already name. 24. The "I'll deal with it later" pile. There is a specific way clutter tends to form in most homes. It doesn't arrive fully assembled. It grows. It begins with one item, something without an obvious home, or something that needs a decision you're not ready to make. It gets placed somewhere, temporary, the counter, the arm of the couch, the edge of the desk. This first placement is the real error, because it creates permission for the next temporary item, and the one after that. Within a week, the temporary spot has become a landmark. Other people in the house navigate around it. Your own eye, with remarkable efficiency, learns to unsee it entirely. The pile has become part of the room. Here's why it happens. The temporary placement bypasses the decision the object actually requires. The decision doesn't disappear. It just gets stored in the pile. And a pile of postponed decisions carries a kind of quiet mental weight that outlasts the physical space it takes up. You don't have to be actively thinking about it for it to be sitting somewhere in the back of your mind. The fix is structural. Every object you pick up gets a decision immediately. Not a permanent one, an immediate one. It belongs in the second drawer, and it goes there now. Or it needs more thought, and it goes into a designated decision box processed once a week. Or it's trash, and it goes straight to the bin. 3 destinations. Every object reaches one before it gets set down. The pile can't form if nothing is placed for now. 23. Keeping every receipt indefinitely. The receipt drawer, or the receipt corner of a wallet, or the receipt envelope that's expanded into a receipt pile, is one of the most common forms of paper clutter there is. The logic behind keeping receipts is sound at the start. Proof of purchase for returns. documentation for warranties, records for taxes. What the logic almost never specifies is an endpoint. Receipts get kept because they were kept last week too. The grocery receipt from 9 months ago, representing a meal long eaten, stays because throwing it away feels like a decision, and keeping it requires none at all. A simple time framework fixes this. Everyday purchases, food, clothing, household goods, only need their receipt for 30 days, the standard return window. Larger purchases get kept with the item's documentation for the warranty period. Tax-relevant receipts get kept for the tax year, plus the required audit window. Everything else, which is most of what actually accumulates, has no real reason to stay past the day it arrives. Keep it simple physically. One small envelope for active receipts, one folder for tax documents. Everything else exits immediately or at a 4-minute monthly review. A receipt kept past its purpose isn't documentation anymore. It's just a small, quiet reminder that you haven't decided what to do with it. Multiply that by dozens of receipts sitting in a drawer, and it adds up to more mental clutter than the paper itself would suggest. The strange part is how rarely those old receipts actually get used for anything. Most people don't dig through a drawer of 9-month-old paper to solve a real problem. They just keep adding to it, one purchase at a time, until the drawer itself becomes the problem. 22. Letting mail sit unopened the counter by the front door, or wherever mail seems to migrate in your house, has a personality of its own. It accumulates. Unopened mail is a stack of postponed decisions with a coherent identity. Every piece arrives specifically for you, requiring something from you and got declined. That's part of why it feels heavier than its size. Researchers who've studied clutter and stress in American homes, including a well-known UCLA study that measured cortisol levels in mothers dealing with cluttered spaces, have consistently found that stacks of paper register in the brain as pending obligations, not neutral objects. The mail pile doesn't let you forget it's there. The fix happens at the point of arrival. Mail gets opened immediately, standing near the recycling bin. Junk and promotional material goes straight to recycling without a full read. Bills get opened and given a specific destination, a folder or an immediate digital entry. Personal mail gets read and responded to or filed. Anything needing action within 30 days goes into an action tray. The counter never becomes a mail surface because the mail never lands there in the first place. The mail pile isn't really an organizational problem. It's a decision avoidance habit wearing a location's disguise. Most people who try this notice something within the first week. The mail itself doesn't feel any different, but the counter does. It stops being a place that quietly accuses you of falling behind and just goes back to being a counter. Leave a comment. Which of these first 4 describes you best? I'll be reading. And keep watching. Habit 15 is one most people never even thought to call a habit. 21. Saying yes to every free item. Free is one of the most powerful words in consumer psychology, and in the context of a home, one of the most quietly costly. The free sample at the store, the promotional item from a conference, the gift with purchase tucked alongside something you actually wanted, the item a family member offers you while downsizing. Each one arrives with a compelling feature. It costs nothing. And that zero cost skips the evaluation most acquisitions go through. When you pay for something, you weigh it. When it's free, there's nothing obvious to weigh, so most people don't. But a free object isn't actually free. Its cost is the space it occupies, the decision of what to do with it, and eventually the effort of getting rid of it once it's clearly not serving any purpose. The question that actually matters isn't, does this cost anything? It's, would I have sought this out if it weren't being handed to me right now? If the honest answer is no, accepting it means acquiring something you don't want, simply because declining felt awkward in the moment. The shift. Ask that question before you accept, not after. A polite decline beats a guilty acceptance, followed by months of storage and an eventual harder decision to let it go. It helps to remember that declining a free item rarely offends anyone the way it feels like it might in the moment. Most people offering it move on within seconds and forget the exchange happened at all. You're usually the only one still carrying it months later. 20. Buying duplicates of things you already own. There's a specific kind of failure that disguises itself as preparedness. You can't find the scissors. You look briefly in the obvious place, and they're not there. Rather than spending 2 more minutes searching, you buy another pair. Efficient. Problem solved. 3 weeks later, doing a different kind of search, you find both. The original, exactly where it always was, and the new one, still in its packaging. This pattern repeats across dozens of categories in most homes. Batteries bought on the assumption you're out. Cleaning products bought without checking the cabinet. Tools bought because their real location was never clearly established. This isn't really a shopping problem, it's a systems problem. The absence of a clear shared sense of what the household owns and where it lives. It happens most in multi-person households, where everyone assumes someone else knows where things are, and nobody actually does. The fix needs 2 things: a genuine 2-minute search before assuming something is gone, and a system clear enough that the search actually gives a reliable answer. When the scissors always live in the second drawer, "Do we have scissors?" has an immediate answer without a purchase providing one. Once that system exists, the duplicate buying habit tends to fix itself, not through willpower, but because the uncertainty that drove it is gone. 19. Half-finishing declutter projects. The closet that's been in progress for 3 weeks is more disorienting than the closet was before you started. A decluttering project abandoned midway leaves a space in a kind of limbo. The items you already evaluated are mixed with the ones you haven't. The clear zones and unclear zones look identical from the outside. What was crowded but organized has become genuinely disorganized, with the added demoralization of having already tried. There's a well-documented psychological pattern behind why this feels so heavy. The mind tends to hold on to unfinished tasks more persistently than finished ones. An unfinished project doesn't just sit in the closet, it sits in the back of your mind, resurfacing every so often as something you still need to return to. The fix is scope. The project should never be bigger than what you can finish in one sitting. Not the whole closet, one shelf of it. Not the whole kitchen, one drawer. A small thing finished completely beats a large thing abandoned halfway, every time, because finishing is what actually creates momentum. It's tempting to start big on a burst of motivation, a whole weekend, a whole room. But motivation rarely lasts as long as a full closet takes to finish. And what's left behind when it runs out is worse than what you started with. One finished shelf, done today, beats one ambitious plan that stalls by Sunday afternoon. 18. Rearranging instead of removing. There's a kind of activity that feels like progress without producing any. The pile migrates from the counter into a basket. The basket goes on the shelf. It looks more organized now, but the object count hasn't changed. The decisions those objects require still haven't happened. What changed is the presentation of the problem, which temporarily makes it easier to look at, which temporarily lowers the motivation to actually deal with it. Organizing and decluttering are different activities with different results. Organizing creates order within a fixed set of things. Decluttering reduces the set. Organizing a collection that should really be reduced isn't progress. It's a delay dressed up as one. Before moving anything, ask the real question first. Am I moving this because it belongs somewhere else or because I want to stop seeing it where it is? If it's the second, moving it is the wrong move. Deciding about it is the right one. You can usually tell the difference by how the object feels once it's been organized. If it still bothers you in its new container, the container was never the fix. The object itself still needs a decision you haven't made yet. 17. Impulse buying organizational products. There is a particular irony in the category of objects most likely to get bought on impulse in the name of getting organized. The cute basket at checkout, the stackable bin that would be so useful, the color-coordinated drawer dividers. These get bought not to solve a specific identified problem, but in response to the general feeling that something should be more organized. Organizational products bought without a specific use in mind almost always turn into clutter about clutter. They join the house without a job, which means they need to be stored, which means they take up the very space they were theoretically going to free up. The rule that actually works: buy the tool only after the need is specific. Not I should have better drawer organization, but the utensil drawer has 5 spatulas and needs dividers sized for these 3 categories. The need is real and measured. Everything bought before that need is identified is just another thing that will eventually need decluttering itself. A small, ironic addition to the very pile it was supposed to solve. 16. Holding on to aspirational purchases. Of every category of object that fills a home without earning its space, this one carries the most emotional weight. The yoga mat from a January that felt full of intention, the bread machine from a stretch when homemade bread seemed like a realistic weekly habit, the guitar that represented a version of your life that included music made with your own hands. Each of these arrived meaning something real. The desire behind the purchase wasn't irrational. It was an honest investment in a direction you wanted to go. What it becomes, once that direction shifts the way directions naturally do, is a physical record of the gap between who you meant to be and who you are. And seeing that gap daily, in object form, produces a quiet, low-grade guilt that adds up over time. You're not who you were when you bought it. You were fully that person for a while. That's not failure. That's just the ordinary way a life moves through phases. The object doesn't need to stay to honor the intention. The intention is honored by the fact that it was real, whether or not the object survives it. The shift, if it's gone unused for a full season, it's not aspirational anymore. It's just taking up room. Release the object. Keep the part of the intention that still actually lives in you if it does, and if it doesn't, let that go too, without guilt. I want to pause here because in my experience, this is the habit people recognize the fastest. Mine was a bread machine. Bought during a January, I barely remember the rest of now, used maybe 4 times, and moved between 3 different cabinets over 6 years before it finally left the house. Getting rid of it didn't feel like giving up on anything. It felt like admitting something I'd already known for a while. That's usually what makes the aspirational object hard. Not that you don't know what to do with it, it's that letting it go feels like admitting something you're not quite ready to say out loud. But that admission isn't defeat. It's just accuracy. It's recognizing that you've moved, which is the only direction the life ever really goes. Tell me in the comments what your aspirational object is, the one you've been looking past for way too long. Habit 15 is coming up next, and it's one almost nobody sees as a habit at all. 15. Letting one room serve 5 purposes. The bedroom that's also an office, also a gym, also the place where things go when guests are coming and there's no time to deal with them properly. When a space has no single clear function, your mind never fully settles into any of them. The bedroom that's also an office rarely becomes a true place of rest, because work is still physically present in it. The desk visible from the bed registers as active context, even if you're not using it right now. This shows up clearly in sleep research. The presence of work-related objects in a sleeping space measurably increases how long it takes to fall asleep and lowers reported sleep quality, even when you're not actively working. The brain reads the context and stays partly switched on. The fix is strict functional zoning. Give each space one primary purpose, and relocate everything that doesn't serve it, even when that relocation is inconvenient, even when it means using another space differently than before. A room that knows what it's for feels entirely different from a room that's trying to be everything. This is genuinely harder in a small home, where every square foot feels like it needs to earn its keep by doing double or triple duty, but the alternative cost is real too. A bedroom that's never quite fully a bedroom ends up giving you a slightly worse version of rest every single night in exchange for a slightly more convenient home office during the day. 14. The junk drawer with no boundaries. Every household can reasonably have one, a drawer for odds and ends that don't have a better home. The problem isn't that it exists, it's that unlike almost every other storage category, it rarely stays within its own limits. It starts as one drawer. Within a year, it's recruited a second. Within a few more, there's a junk area instead of a junk drawer, because miscellaneous has no natural ceiling the way a bookshelf does. A shelf is full when no more books fit, but one more miscellaneous item is always technically possible. The fix treats even the miscellaneous category with a real boundary. One drawer, not two. A monthly 10-minute review where anything that's found a more specific home exits and anything unused for a month follows it out. And an in rule: when the drawer is full and something new needs to go in, something already there has to come out first. The one drawer limit isn't arbitrary. A miscellaneous category with no ceiling isn't really a category, it's just a slow, quiet permission to keep everything indefinitely, one small object at a time. 13. Never using the gift wrap stash somewhere in most homes. A drawer, a bag inside a bag. There's a collection of gift wrapping supplies. Tissue paper in colors that seemed useful. Ribbon saved because it's technically reusable. Bags from past gifts, kept because they're still functional. Rolls of wrapping paper in various states of partial use. This starts with a sensible instinct. Reusing gift materials is genuinely economical. The problem is that the collection rarely stays calibrated to actual use. Gift receiving tends to bring in more material than gift-giving uses up, so the stash quietly grows every year, whether or not it's ever fully used. The fix is a hard container limit, one actual box for all gift-wrapping material. When it's full and something new needs to go in, the decision happens right there. Something already inside has served its purpose and leaves, or the new item doesn't come in. The box is the limit. What fits is the collection. Most households, once they actually measure it, find they have far more wrapping supplies than they'll use in the next several years of gift-giving combined. The instinct to save it all is economical in theory. In practice, it's just a slower kind of accumulation. 12. Letting countertops become landing zones. The kitchen counter, the hallway table, the surface just inside the front door. These attract objects for a simple structural reason. They're horizontal, accessible, and sit along the paths you actually walk through your home. Whatever you're carrying when you enter tends to land on the nearest one. These surfaces don't fill up because someone is disorganized. They fill up because they're perfectly positioned to receive things in transit. And things in transit have a strong tendency to just stay put once they land, not through any decision, but through the simple absence of one. Treat every counter as functional space, earning its value through active use in the moment rather than by holding things between uses. The practical fix is a daily reset, not deep cleaning, just clearing. Every object gets its actual home, not a nearby temporary one. 2 minutes daily beats 30 minutes monthly, and it produces a completely different feeling kitchen. The math is simple once you actually compare it. 2 minutes a day adds up to about 12 minutes a week. A month of accumulated landing zone deposits left alone easily takes 30 to 60 minutes to sort through properly. And by then, half of it requires real decisions instead of quick ones. 11. Postponing small repairs, the broken zipper on an otherwise fine bag. The drawer that needs a specific technique to open. The chair leg with a slight wobble that hasn't quite failed yet. The dripping faucet you've stopped hearing. Each of these sits in a strange, middle category, technically working but not working well, which means the object doesn't get the full use it was bought for. It's being partially stored rather than fully used. The fix is a real deadline, 1 week from noticing. If it's not fixed by then, it gets a decision. Repair it now, schedule a professional repair, replace it, or let it go. A small repair handled promptly is a 5 to 15-minute task. The same repair ignored for 6 months is often a much bigger one, or has quietly become a reason to buy a replacement you didn't actually need to buy yet. Small repairs treated consistently and promptly are almost trivial. Left to accumulate, they add up to a home that feels vaguely broken no matter how much effort goes into organizing everything else in it. 10. Buying in bulk beyond actual use. Bulk buying makes real sense for a narrow category of things, items you use reliably and predictably, where storage doesn't compromise the rest of your space. Paper towels, coffee, laundry detergent. It stops making sense the moment it's applied to things you use irregularly, or that need real dedicated space, or that get bought in quantities so large they'll expire or lose relevance before they're used. The bulk price creates a compelling moment at checkout. The value only holds if the item actually gets used within a reasonable window. The real question before any bulk purchase: how much of this does the household genuinely use in a month? The answer should set the quantity, not the biggest size at the best unit price. Storage space has a real cost, and every bulk purchase beyond actual need is quietly borrowing against it. An item bought in bulk and stored for 2 years before half of it gets thrown away expired was never really a value purchase. It was a full-price purchase of what got used, plus a quiet payment in storage space and eventual waste for what didn't. 9. Keeping every plastic bag just in case. Almost every kitchen has a drawer or cabinet holding a growing collection of plastic bags, not the ones in active use, but the general accumulation kept on the principle that bags are reusable, so they should be saved. That principle is true in isolation. The problem is that reasonable number rarely gets applied in practice. Bags come in constantly through shopping and takeout, and go out only when reused, which happens less often than they arrive. There's a real discomfort with waste behind the instinct to save them, a value worth respecting. But hoarding far more bags than you'll ever use isn't honoring that value. It's just a different kind of waste, of space, and of the small mental tax of registering a drawer that never seems to have a limit. The fix is specific. Figure out roughly how many bags the household actually uses in a typical month, keep that number plus a modest reserve, and let the rest go, ideally through a store recycling program. 8. Letting laundry become furniture. The chair in the bedroom, or the corner of the bed, or a specific spot on the floor near the closet that's gradually stopped being furniture and become clothing storage instead. What lands there is usually clothing in a real gray area, worn once, not dirty enough to wash, not quite clean enough to confidently put back. The standard system only has 2 categories, clean and dirty, and this clothing fits neither one cleanly. The chair solves that ambiguity, which is exactly why it keeps growing week after week until it's no longer a chair. It's a garment rack in the wrong room. The fix is a designated hook or hanger specifically for once-worn clothing. A real deliberate spot, not a surface it happens to land on. And one absolute rule: if it's been on the chair more than a day, it's either being worn today, going to the wash, or going back in the closet. No fourth option. Once the hook exists, the chair almost always empties out on its own within a week or two, not because anyone's enforcing a rule, but because the ambiguous clothing finally has somewhere real to go. And a real home is always more useful than a temporary one. 7. Accumulating seasonal decor every year. Every holiday season brings something new into most homes. An ornament, a decorative piece that caught your eye at the store, a gift of seasonal items from family. Each addition feels small and easy to justify, since it's seasonal, and doesn't feel as permanent as furniture or clothing would. But seasonal items are permanent items that just happen to spend 11 months a year in storage. Every year's new additions join what's already there, and the collection, and the space it needs, quietly grows every single year, whether or not it's ever fully used again. The fix is a simple exchange rule. For every new seasonal item that comes in, one existing, one goes out. The collection stays the same size indefinitely, and the discipline of that trade naturally makes new additions more deliberate. This isn't about refusing to add anything new. It's about recognizing that a decade of small, individually reasonable additions adds up to a genuinely large amount of storage dedicated entirely to items used about 1 month out of every 12. 6. Avoiding decisions about inherited items. This is the category most people find hardest, not because the objects are the most valuable, but because the decision was never really about the object. The furniture that arrived after a grandparent passed, the dishware from a parent downsizing, the keepsakes a relative wanted to stay in the family. These are hard to release not because they fail any practical test, many of them would fail quickly, but because letting them go can feel like a kind of betrayal of the person, or the memory, or the relationship the object came from. Here's the distinction that actually helps. The relationship doesn't live in the object. What someone meant to you, the way they shaped you, the things they taught you, is carried in you, not stored in a piece of furniture. The object is a trigger for memory. It was never the memory itself. A lot of what keeps inherited items in a house for decades is guilt standing in for love, the feeling that releasing the object releases the relationship. It doesn't. The relationship already happened fully, and it doesn't need physical proof to stay real. Keep what genuinely brings you something. Beauty, function, real emotional resonance, without the obligation attached. Let the rest go with real gratitude and without needing to apologize for the space it leaves behind. This is rarely a decision that gets made in one sitting, and it doesn't need to be. It's fine to sit with an inherited object for a while before deciding. What matters is that the decision eventually gets made, not postponed indefinitely out of a guilt that was never really about the object in the first place. 5. Treating flat surfaces as permanent storage. The top of the fridge, the back edge of the bathroom counter, the windowsill, the extra few inches above the books on a shelf. Every flat, visible surface in a home has potential to hold something functional in the moment, to hold something worth looking at, or to hold nothing at all, which is its own kind of value. These surfaces attract objects simply because they're horizontal, available, and not clearly claimed by anything else. An object without a home finds a surface without a purpose, and what was available space quietly becomes occupied space, which then attracts neighbors. Empty space isn't wasted space. It's active. It's the visual pause that gives everything around it room to actually be seen. Pick one surface per room to keep intentionally empty. Not incidentally empty, but empty because you decided it should be, and you maintain that decision. It becomes the visual anchor of the room, the place your eye returns to when everything else feels like a lot. The first time you try this, the empty surface will feel almost uncomfortable, like something is missing. That discomfort fades within a couple of weeks, and what replaces it is a strange sense of relief every time your eyes land there. 4. Letting digital clutter create physical piles. The photographs you've meant to sort and back up properly, the documents you've meant to scan, the receipts and correspondence you've kept physically because the digital process felt like too much to deal with in the moment. Digital disorganization has a specific way of showing up physically. When the digital side feels overwhelming or unclear, paper becomes the default. The bank statement stays because you're not sure if it's been scanned. The photo stays physical because you haven't decided what to do with it digitally, and at least the paper has a definite, tangible presence. The pile ends up doing double duty. It's both the document and the reminder that a digital task still exists. It's a to-do list made of paper. The fix treats digital and physical as one sequence, not two separate problems. Paper arrives, and the decision happens immediately. Scan it now, or place it in a designated scanning tray processed within 48 hours. File it physically, or discard it. There is no keep it until I figure out the digital side. That's exactly what lets the pile grow indefinitely. Setting up the digital side first, even imperfectly, matters more than it seems. A rough system you actually use beats a perfect system you keep meaning to build, because the pile doesn't wait for the perfect version. It just keeps growing while you plan it. 3. Keeping expired coupons and unused deals. In a drawer, a wallet compartment, or a pile near the counter, most households keep a small collection of deals. Coupons clipped with real intention. Gift cards set aside for an occasion that never quite specified itself. Loyalty rewards earned and never redeemed. These get kept because they represent value, and discarding them can feel like discarding money even 3 months past expiration, even for a store you don't shop at anymore. But an expired coupon isn't a deal. It's paper that once represented one and now represents a decision time already made for you. A 5-minute monthly review handles this cleanly. Anything expired exits immediately, and anything still valid gets a specific plan. An occasion, a purchase, a date. Or it exits too because a deal without a plan will just be expired by the next review anyway. A wallet holding only current, intentionally planned deals is easy to navigate. A wallet holding everything that once seemed worth keeping is really just a small archive of past good intentions that never became actions. 2. Holding on to packaging just in case. In a closet, a shelf, a corner of the garage, most homes accumulate boxes, not storage boxes, but the original packaging from electronics, appliances, and equipment kept in case something needs to be returned or shipped someday. Most return windows close within 30 to 90 days. After that, the box's only remaining function is looking roughly the right size for a future need that may never come. That's a real consideration, but rarely one that justifies permanently storing packaging from every single purchase. The fix is a clean rule. The day the return window closes, the box closes with it. For anything genuinely intended for resale within a specific window, keep the box only until that window ends. The closet space currently holding boxes from purchases made years ago is real, usable, finite space, worth giving back to your actual life. If resale ever does come up years later, a box isn't the only solution, and it usually isn't even the deciding factor in the sale. It's one convenience held on to at the cost of closet space for a scenario that, in most households, never actually arrives. 1. The someday space. Every home has one. The spare room, the garage corner, the closet shelf that's quietly, over years of small decisions, become the place where everything unresolved ends up. Things arrive there not through carelessness, but because life brings in more than any single moment has the capacity to fully process. A relative's belongings, items from a home you used to live in, equipment from a chapter of life that's already closed. The real problem is structural. The someday space has no built-in mechanism for creating someday. It just holds indefinitely with no schedule and no natural trigger for review, which means things placed there with every intention of coming back to them actually get revisited less often than things placed almost anywhere else. There's a concept in Japanese design called ma, the intentional empty space that gives a room its actual function. A room with no empty space left in it isn't a room being used, it's a room being stored in. The someday space is a room that's been entirely converted to storage, with no MA left, no breathing room, no real capacity to be a room at all. You don't need to clear it all at once. That usually just produces the same half-finished result as any oversized project. Choose one section, one shelf, one corner. Make the real decisions it requires, keep it, and give it an actual home, donate it, or let it go. Then, and only then, move to the next section. Every part of that space that becomes genuinely empty isn't wasted. It's It's what the room was, before it quietly became the place where everything unresolved went to wait. 25 habits, none of them dramatic. All of them operating just below the level you'd normally notice, which is exactly why they're so good at filling a home without ever seeming to. The later pile, the duplicate purchase, the half-finished project, the aspirational object, the someday space that slowly became a someday room. None of these are character flaws. They're patterns, specific, learnable, changeable. Each one has a specific shift, and none of them require a weekend marathon or reinventing how you live. That drawer I told you about at the beginning, the one that never fully closed, finally got fixed on an ordinary Tuesday for no dramatic reason at all. I just picked up the spatula, looked at it for a second, and let it go. The drawer closed the first time, easily, the way it probably always could have. Here's the simplest way I know to find which habit is most active in your home right now. Look around the room you're in. Find the thing your eyes keep sliding past, not the obvious mess, the thing you've stopped really seeing. That's usually the habit talking, not the object. Deal with just that one thing today, not the room, not the house, just that one thing. You don't need a free weekend for this. You don't need a system, or a label maker, or a fresh start on the first of the month. You just need to notice the one thing your eyes have been sliding past and give it the 2-minute decision it's been quietly waiting on. Tell me in the comments which of these 25 hit closest to home, and which one you're tackling first. Subscribe. Every Wednesday and Saturday, this channel goes deeper into what Japan figured out about living well. See you next week.